Good morning. The Ranter is back to go into yet another rambling diatribe of the news of the day. And when we get past, not really get past, because things are still happening, but when we move slightly in our news media from the atrocities of ICE, of the assaults and brutalities and to murders done by ICE, when we move away from our foreign debacles, like us for no real serious reason, us attacking Venezuela and taking their leader and imprisoning him, when we move past the self-inflicted conflict that we have in our desperate need for some reason to claim Denmark's owned Greenland, saying that not only we have to save it and protect it in our natural interest from China or Russia that is swarming around Greenland, that we have to control it. Even though we have bases on there, and we've been having bases on there for a while, and we would be welcome to have more military bases on there, so that's really not necessary. But when we move past all of that and are near, standoff with NATO for no apparent fucking reason, when we return from all those breaking news stories, we return to the Epstein files, because that does not go away, no matter how many deflections or distractions or self-made scandals in order to draw our attention away. We return to the Epstein files, to the subsequent events of the Epstein files, of the victims of the Epstein files, and despite the claims of Donald Trump being the most transparent president, and was instrumental in getting so many files out there that no one other than Donald Trump has done this. Pam Bondi, also known as Attorney General Barbie, proved to us all how much the Trump administration values the concept of child rape and wanting to see justice done for these survivors. This particular Ranter video is named "A Picture is Worth 1,000 Words," and the picture of the avatar of my thumbnail of this video is the picture that is worth 1,000 words. For that picture is of the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein standing up with their hands raised, acknowledging that they wanted to reach out to the Department of Justice to tell their story, to give their evidence. And all of them were denied. All of them were not spoken to. And the picture's worth 1,000 words when you see Pam Bondi not look at them when they're right behind her, face turned away with a little smirk. We understand the importance of child rape to this administration when she screeches out in her overly melodramatic, performative temper tantrum of a child, not befitting the office of Attorney General, not befitting the behavior of an adult. How she screeched out that we should all be talking about the Dow Jones, as opposed to what the proceedings was about of her testimony, which was the Epstein files and what happened to the Epstein victims who were standing right fucking behind her. What Pam Bondi, in her flailing, ranting, in her flailing, ranting attack of any Democrat that dares ask her a question about the Epstein files. Their deflections and whataboutisms and this and that to make sure she never answers a single question about Jeffrey Epstein, the files, and her and the Department of Justice's responsibility thereof. She does prove a point. And the point goes back to the picture's worth 1,000 words, because this administration would rather deal with, talk with, and give benefits to someone like Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted of sex trafficking, grooming, and was a participant in the rapes of these victims. She was not a bystander, she was involved in them. They would rather deal with her, have conversations with her. They would take her from the high security prison that she was in and bring her to a lower security prison that was inappropriate for her to do so given the crimes that she was convicted of. They would rather deal with her, have conversations with her, want her to be testifying about the victimization done by her and Epstein and anyone else, as opposed to the actual victims who were victimized by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as those that Pam Bondi and the DOJ are actively protecting. And it is not hyperbole to say that they're actively protecting. It is not me projecting bias against the Trump administration to say that they're actually actively protecting. We see it with our own eyes that they're actively protecting these individuals, be it Trump, be it anybody else in power. How do we know? Because when they finally pushed out a portion of these Epstein files, when they are compelled to by the very law that Congress successfully voted through, that the Senate unanimously voted through, and Trump was begrudgingly forced to sign into law about the Epstein Transparency Act, which the law states therein that the only redactions was to be made was to the names of the victims, but not those who could be co-conspirators, those names that were involved with Jeffrey Epstein. And also release all the files, which they didn't do. They, as I said, didn't release all the files. And they did redact a hell of a lot of names. And those names were not victims. In fact, many names of victims, many pictures of victims, some pictures that were nude of them were released, were exposed. They are actively protecting these powerful people because, according to this Trump administration, from Trump on down, in their belief, the real victims of this Epstein files scandal are the names of the people, not the victims, not the actual victims of the actual trafficking, the grooming, and the rapes. And how do we also, what further evidence do we have that we know that these people are being protected? Is that when the DOJ, under the new law, was compelled to release the files, which again, only a portion, and redacted the names of those who were not supposed to be redacted, and unredacted those that were supposed to be redacted. When they presented it for the Congress to view, for Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, the Democrat and Republican, that was spearheading the law, when they were providing the Epstein files to be reviewed, the DOJ set aside office space for this, and that office space only had 4 computers. 4 computers that have access to the Epstein files, the unredacted Epstein files. To which, for what was released, which is 3.8 million documents of the Epstein files, would take forever, would take far longer than the allotted time for these congressmen and congresswomen to study this, to seek out the answers that they were looking for. For what was said, for what they did discover from this scratching of the surface, in this attempt of this DOJ to, at the same time, not give all the information that was being compelled by law to do so, which means they're breaking the law, but at the same time, making these people go blind on paperwork with the limited access to what they do produce. 3.8 million documents being reviewed only on 4 computers in the DOJ office that they're allowing the Congress to view from. In a rather small office, so you can't get all the congressmen in there to, huddle around these computer screens. But in a way, some of the outrage towards what they did discover, depending on the person that is looking through this, I find to be also kind of ridiculous. Not ridiculous is that the outrage because all this is horrendous and all this is the acts of evil. But how some people's opinions turned on the Epstein investigation over the severity. For some people, it seems that the concept of trafficking, grooming, and raping 13, 14-year-old girls or wasn't horrific enough. Wasn't worth it. But when they hear about emails talking about people going, oh, that 9-year-old. Let's get that Brazilian 9-year-old in here. She looks spunky. Somehow, that is the bridge too far. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. Stella. So, as she's moving about for some reason, get over here. Get over here. She could pop up. She's a good little pop up. Now, and why do I say this 9-year-old being the issue? Alright, let me tell you a little quote. This quote comes from Republican Senator Cynthia Loomis of Wyoming. Made this statement after reviewing the newly unredacted files related to Jeffrey Epstein. Quote, well, initially my reaction to all this was, I don't care. I don't know what the big deal is. But now I see what the big deal is, and it was worth investigating, she added. I've sort of intentionally deferred to others with to find out about it, but 9-year-old victims? Wow. Indicating learning about the young age of the victims changed her perspective on the importance of the investigation. Okay, so it took her learning that a 9-year-old or 9-year-olds, plural, were being victimized, assaulted, abused, and raped. To go, that's the last straw. That draws a line. But if it was 13 or 14-year-olds, 15 or 16-year-olds, who cares? I don't care. That was the behavior. I'll let other people, that's just white noise to me. But 9-year-olds? Wow. I don't care if they're 36-year-olds. Or 25-year-olds. Or 46-year-olds. Or they're women. Or they're men. It should be a big deal that it's the rape. No matter who it is. I mean, the shock value of it being so young, yeah, that is completely and utterly evil and awful. But all rapes are evil and awful. And if you're not outraged when it's done to an adult, what does that say about you? At some point, she's going to start, running outside and barking because there might be a breeze or there might be a bird chirping, and she must investigate, search, and destroy. She's a vicious little French bulldog. But the level of protection that Attorney General Barbie and the DOJ and the Trump administration is giving to these powerful people, these powerful men, maybe even women, we don't know, because we don't see all the files. But these powerful men is staggering. You cannot learn of this and still keep a straight face. That's saying that this Department of Justice under Trump is actually interested in justice. You can't. Or at least you can't without understanding the scope of human adult responsibility and consequence and morality. If you're so ardently, passionately devoted to your partisan politics, to your tribe, that you won't believe if the other side tells you that the sun is going to rise in the morning with the dawn. If you disbelieve that because your dear leader says that the sun is going to rise at midnight, what else is there? I mean, that is the brick wall that people slam against at all times. That you can't even allow there to be cracks. You can't even allow the idea of there being, let me think about that. You're not supposed to think about that. I get sick and tired of the argument that Trump defenders give about when they talk about Trump being the most transparent president. How they say their whole knee-jerk is, well, Biden didn't release that. Why didn't Biden release any of this? Why didn't Merrick Garland release any of this? It annoys me because it once again goes into the concept of them thinking we have short-term memory loss. Because I seem to recall it was a big deal during the Biden administration to getting the flight list of those who took Jeffrey Epstein's plane. Remember that? That we found that laundry list of people that took Jeffrey Epstein's plane, whether they went to the island or not, just them being on his plane. And it was a who's who. It was a name du jour. And you can't quite imagine that all of them are like, this clandestine global cabal of pedophiles. When you have like the Pope or Gwyneth Paltrow or any of these other people who are just celebrities. But that doesn't mean that you don't believe it. Doesn't mean that it's not worthy of investigation. All of it is worthy of investigation. If you have a legit reason that you happen to be there and he happens to be there, explain that, we move on. See, because I'm such a normal person, living a common, retail job, paycheck to paycheck kind of life, that I don't understand the appeal of Jeffrey Epstein to begin with, why people were begging to go party on his island, like Elon Musk did, even though he claimed to never wanted to do that, or never had any contact with Jeffrey Epstein. And how many people who will claim that they had no contact with Jeffrey Epstein at all, then we find out later, oh, they went to the island. Why are so many people wanting to party with this guy? And go to that specific island? I don't get it. I mean, it does feed into the conspiracy theories, not only of these people taking part in Jeffrey Epstein's fun and games, but also what was Jeffrey Epstein doing other than the obvious? Was he a spy? Was he running, a clandestine honeypot scandal to entrap rich and powerful people with the allure of underage girls? And it seems, according to these documents, that we do see, like, the conversations that he does have with these redacted names of them talking about, how youthful and naughty these prepubescent girls are. How one of the names that was unredacted, one of the 6 names are unredacted who were considered co-conspirators, that Jeffrey Epstein traded emails back and forth with, saying that he loved the torture video that this guy sent him. There's no doubt that this guy's an evil fuck. Ghislaine Maxwell is an evil fuck. And yet people are bending themselves into knots to protect themselves because they associated themselves with him. And it's almost petty to go into the partisanship of this, of dividing up what the difference between Democrats and Republicans are in a situation like this, because I don't think in reality there is a partisanship involved in this. This is not Republican corrupt people, doing this. This is not Democrat corrupt people doing this. This is powerful people doing this. Period. Full stop. It doesn't matter the party. It's the power. It's the power. It's the money. It's the power. It's the ability to get away with anything. To me, I've said this in multiple videos now, when it comes to either talking about Jeffrey Epstein or something similar to Jeffrey Epstein. It reminds me of the scene from the movie 8mm, when Nicolas Cage asked the lawyer, why did the old man wanted a video of a little girl getting tortured and killed in a snuff film, an underage girl. And the lawyer said, because he could. What other reason was there? See, that is so true. It's the age-old question. What can you give a man who has everything? I mean, Jeffrey Epstein's answer was, give them a young girl. Now, in the last few days, there was a report that the FBI came out and claimed that through their tireless search and look through all the evidence that Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic young girls to other people. The current incarnation of the FBI, I'm sorry, I don't believe. When this FBI and FBI Director Kash Patel. See, Trump not only has a collection of Barbies, he has a collection of Kens. When FBI Ken is telling investigators in the Renee Good shooting to quit investigating because whatever evidence they might uncover might damage the official narrative of what happened to Renee Good and the subsequent circumstances of her death, that means that the FBI isn't all that reliable. And Kash Patel had already testified earlier that they found nothing. They found nothing. Nothing to see here. Move along. Same thing as Pam Bondi. And Pam Bondi literally says, I have the Epstein list on my desk. And they passed out the binders to the MAGA influencers, and the binders had nothing that we didn't already know, including the flight lists. And they said there was nothing to see here. Along the same time, the president says, why do we keep talking about the Epstein files? Because it's about child rape. It's about rape. It's about the systematic raping of young girls that rich and powerful people was involved with. Yeah. That's why. And sorry for you that the victims, the survivors, are still alive, that are actively trying to get justice done. I know it's kind of inconvenient for your march of authoritarianism. So inconvenient. In what little, with a scratch of the surface of the documentations that has been produced involving Jeffrey Epstein and the names involved therein, the New York Times reports that in 5,300 documents that was reviewed, Trump's name was mentioned either in correspondence, news clippings, media, 38,000 times. He's mentioned more in the Epstein files than Jesus Christ is mentioned in the Bible. Check it out. Between 3 versions of the Bible, Jesus Christ's name is mentioned in one form or another between 1,000 and 1,300 times. And Trump dwarfs it, being mentioned by Jeffrey Epstein, associates of Jeffrey Epstein, conversations with Jeffrey Epstein, stray clips of these files. And there was nothing He has no involvement in this, really? The stuff that we find out, whether it's true or not, is so horrific. Of him inspecting the girls in Mar-a-Lago, expecting these young girls to see how tight they were. We don't know if that's true or not, but that was in the files. We find out through call logs earlier, before the whole Epstein dump case, which again I had to go back to why it frustrates me about people with Biden, that Jeffrey Epstein brought one of his young toys, we'll call these poor unfortunate girls, to Trump's property. And he didn't know? There's documentation in the files of him spending hours with the victims. He tells people now that he has no idea what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. Then there is a stray call. We find out that he called Palm Beach, after Jeffrey Epstein got in trouble. He says, "Oh, well, I knew it all along. He was bad and she's evil." Then denies that a conversation ever took place. The performance yesterday by Pam Bondi proves that they don't give a shit upon the victims. The victims should have been left in the dustbin of history. Why bring them back up? Why bring any of this up? That's old news. Let's talk about the Dow. Let's talk about all the accomplishments of the greatest president of our history. An adult said this in the middle of a testimony involving the systematic grooming, trafficking, and raping of young girls. Whenever Democrat will bring up or list someone like Jerry Nadler, we'll try and ask her about the co-conspirators that there's at least 6 names of them, if they were being arrested or investigators, that she winds upon him being involved with the impeachment of Donald Trump. Did you apologize to Donald Trump for almost impeaching him? For 2 times almost impeaching him? Point of order. They didn't almost impeach him. He was impeached. He just wasn't convicted and removed. But he was impeached twice. He is an impeached president. He's been impeached twice. That doesn't go away. That's not off his record. They successfully impeached him. They just didn't remove him. The Senate wasn't going to do that. Because it takes 2/3 of the vote to do so. This had to get out of me, because this is all day yesterday seeing the clips of that train wreck monstrosity of a human being toe the line for her boss. The one segment of that crap where she was tirading about the Democrats, and she was tirading about one Democrat who spoke to her immediately after. And that's the thing, is that when she was on answering the Democrats' questions, she then asked for a few seconds for her to bash those Democrats, free of having any conversations in between times of like the next person coming up, which would be a Republican who kisses her ass. She accuses this one congresswoman of anti-Semitism, which the Jewish congresswoman was not taking, who lost her grandfather in the Holocaust And she got up and she left. And Pam Bondi's just smirking and laughing as she's now addressing the Republican who's about to kiss her ass. We're talking about sanctuary cities. In these little moments where she gets time to reply to a Democrat after their time is up so they can't respond to her because she's a brave person that obviously can interact with people and be adult bullshit. She talks about if the representative is from California, if the representative is from New York, she brings up pictures of like illegal immigrants that committed crimes, like gotchas. I'm getting tired of that. I'm getting tired of them waving around the name Laken Riley, propping her up. This poor woman that was assaulted and killed. But she's a great political football, isn't she? I'm tired of them bringing her up because that's supposed to be the trump card, like against anybody who is undocumented. She shouldn't be dead. You're right. She shouldn't be dead. But these congresswomen who gets this from her, or anybody else for that matter who gets this from her, should really do some research. And it shouldn't be hard research. Because every time someone like her brings up Laken Riley, whoever they're talking to, they're trying to gotcha with, should bring up 3 names of 3 victims of violent assault, abuse, rape, and or murder that was perpetrated by U.S.-born citizens, and ask her why she doesn't care about them. Why doesn't she say their names? Because statistics show us is that undocumented folk commit less crime than United States folk. So I see your 1 card and I raise you 3. Laken Riley shouldn't be dead. You're right. None of these people who get murdered should be dead. It doesn't matter if the person is undocumented or documented, is naturalized here, or was born here. If they murder someone, they murder someone. These people should be alive. But we got to the point in our partisanship where somehow native-born crime is somehow less horrific than crimes done by undocumented. They're just as dead. They're just as dead. They're just as assaulted. They're just as raped. They just have been stolen from. It doesn't matter who did it. They did it. And they should be brought to justice for it. But I'm sorry. It's not more horrific that it was done by an undocumented person than a documented person. None of these people who ever been murdered, who ever been raped, who ever been assaulted, who ever been robbed or mugged should ever have had happen. It doesn't matter who was doing it. That doesn't excuse native-born people doing these crimes. They are no better than someone undocumented doing it. They just do it more. And somehow we don't need to remember the names of victims that gets killed or raped or robbed or mugged when they are being done by a person born in the United States. So I wish some people could just see that card coming from these people and trump them back with 3. 3 crimes done by native born, then that would shut that up. Because Lake and Riley shouldn't be dead. And no one who died at the hands of a native-born person should be dead. They're not better. They're not worse. They're dead. And they shouldn't be. That should be the point. In the end, they want this to drag out till the end of the term. So that we don't get anything done. Hopefully by midterms, some things can turn around and perhaps more pressure can be applied. But allow me to go back again when I talk about Biden, because I think I only scratched the surface of it as kind of my close to landing the plane here. The reason why Biden and Merrick Garland didn't release any Epstein files or didn't redact any names or didn't do this or didn't do that, as these people, whine about the whataboutism about it, it's because it was tooth and nail dragging out any of this information during the Biden administration. Don't you all remember that? Don't you remember how they systematically tried to hide and block shit so that nothing can get released? And I'm talking about people still in the Trump orbit, when he was not president at the time. Pam Bondi was doing that when she was in Florida. They were trying to hide his name. During the Biden administration, late in the Biden administration, when they finally they're releasing the records, slowly, kicking and screaming along the way, we got fractions of the call logs that had Trump's name on it. We had fractions of the flight logs that had Trump's name on it. Why didn't Biden? Because he couldn't. Not legally. They couldn't get that done yet. They were tied up in court for that. People give out the caveat that you're only going after Epstein because you would want Trump's name on it. If there's a Democrat on it, then you're all quiet. If it's Bill Clinton, you're all quiet. How many times did any Democrat comes out, public Democrats, full politicians or media people that says, if Bill Clinton is on the list then fuck him. Serve him up. Make him a pariah. You don't do that for Trump. You don't do that at any of these other people whose names are redacted because Lord knows we got to protect those people. If Bill Clinton was involved with that, if he went to the island, if he got himself a massage, then he should burn in hell like anyone else that did. It is not a hard statement to make. But here's this. With the Clintons, the last few weeks where it became a melodrama that Congress was going to hold them in contempt to force them to testify on the Epstein matters, the James Comer oversights. The Clintons, like Hunter Biden, made the point of they wanted to testify in public. And James Comer, like he did with Hunter Biden, didn't want them to testify in public. Why? Because it's easier to run a spin of a conversation or testimony that was done behind closed doors. It's a little bit different when someone is telling you the narrative of the story as opposed to you seeing it live. What's the matter? Don't you want to try to embarrass Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton in public? And for someone like Clinton who is accused of doing shit, he and Hillary are advocating the release of all the Epstein files. That's guilty behavior, if you ask me. Not like the innocent behavior of Donald Trump, who does his best to try to block anything to do with Epstein being released. That when Republicans start getting themselves, turning their heads around going, maybe we really need to look at this, he calls them traitors. One of the favorite daughters of MAGA, Marjorie Taylor Greene, was ousted from Congress, forced out because she was browbeaten by Trump because of her advocacy towards the Epstein victims and her pushing for the Epstein files to release. The same goes with Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert did turn around to return to her patron and MAGA daddy, but she also paid for it because he helped torpedo a nonpartisan support bill that would help people. And he torpedoed that. Made people vote against it. Not a controversial bill. It was going to help people. That she was helping. And because she betrayed Daddy, people suffered for it. Yeah, that's innocent behavior right there. And maybe we need to start a tally of how many people, from Donald Trump to those in his administration, of those who associate with Donald Trump, or those who are in the Trump orbit, how many of these people had any dealings with Jeffrey Epstein? As we heard more detail from Howard Lutnick, who was once a neighbor of his, who never went to the island, but did go to the island. Years after Jeffrey Epstein was gotten in trouble over sex trafficking, they still went to the island with the kids, with his wife and his kids and their nannies and their nannies' kids. So all these witnesses were on this fun little island. Why did people hang out with this guy? Give me... Somebody tell me this. Because I know he was a financier. But why did people hang around him? What's the appeal here? For the legitimate reasons, for the the non-illegal, non-raping of children reasons. Why would people go and actively hang out with Jeffrey Epstein to get pictures with him? Who was he? I don't get it. I don't get this. And because it is the powerful, we may never know. In any event, it's quite clear, as we saw in yesterday's testimony, the Trump administration does not care about the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. They're more concerned about protecting Don and or protecting the people, the powerful people on these lists. For their point of view, they're the real victims, not the girls that were held down and violently raped. They're not the victims here. Some of these people who are, apologists, especially if someone who was a defender of Prince Andrew went on to Piers Morgan's Lady Victoria, or Veronica, whatever the hell her name is, another blow-dried blonde. She pushed that FBI story up on the FBI, saying no sex trafficking, nothing to see here, and she even said that Ghislaine Maxwell should be released. She got her mic cut by Piers Morgan himself when she started smearing the victims. That goes that far to defend these people, is that they'll smear the victims. They were just asking for it. Yeah, that Brazilian 9-year-old that was emailed about to Jeffrey Epstein. Oh yeah, she was probably asking for it. They were setting them up. Sorry for the silence. It's just... I've said this before, one way or another. I think the one benefit that we find out that does come out from Donald Trump being president of the United States in both the first term and the second term is that it tears away the illusion of our idealism, where you think someone won't do something because it would violate a law, or it's against a rule, or it's not proper, and they do it anyway, and there are no repercussions, no responsibility, no consequences. It just does it and moves on. That pokes a hole through the veil of our complacency that, things matter. The Trump administration, of this and the past administration, does lend credence to people who believe in nihilism. It doesn't matter. Giving a shit about things, thinking things should be run the way that's supposed to be written, giving a shit about the Constitution. Those are adorable, quaint ideas. And you think you can run a government on that, but Trump proves that you don't need to. You can do what you want to do and get away with it because you're powerful. Or you have a political party so in the tank for you because they're so fearful of losing your Trump base that they will sell their souls and sell their family value, religious ideals to help a 34-count felon, sexual abuser, found liable of, plutocratic, hedonist, godless human being that would be antithetical to their proposed ideals that we heard about for decades. That he can get away with it. He could shoot someone down Fifth Avenue and will not lose a single vote. Well, figuratively, metaphorically, his ICE killed Renee Good and Alex Pretty. And the Epstein victims will continue to be victims because there will be no justice for them as long as Donald Trump Pam Bondi, Howard Lutnick's, and the powerful people get away with it. The ranter rants because the urge to rant is always rising. I'm the Ranter Matt. That is the Stella. And we will once again see you at the next atrocity.